professionals. And Barbara's topic today is trauma-informed care. So Barbara, we're going to turn it over to you. After her presentation, she'll be open to questions. So please continue your lunch, but listen carefully to Barbara Thomas, Reverend Barbara Thomas. Welcome her to Caldwell again.
Oh, there we go.
All right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, probably on that.
Whoa. Okay. Good?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So hello again, everyone, and thank you for being here. As I said earlier this morning, and I have slides over here. So I think it's going to be maybe hard for some of you. Raise your hand if you can see the slides. Okay. Some of you, oh, can you see it from over there? Cool. All right. That's great then. All right, wait a minute, Dot. Help me. Help me. Okay. How is that? Better? Okay, I'll try to speak up also. Technology is wonderful when it works. Right? Yeah. So thank you all for coming here. And to John and Dot and everyone for requesting this workshop. I'm going to just tell you a little bit as you eat, kind of the history of this for me. Before I was at the Forum at Hope Haven, which is a training and collaboration center, I worked as Director of Services for the Women's Program at Charlotte Rescue Mission, and I worked at what's now Roof Above, but Urban Ministry Center, Day Services Center, and I was the Director of Services there for 8 years. If you were doing Room in the Inn maybe 15 years ago, you might remember me doing the training, and I did some training also for the Room in the Inn volunteers right now. What I realized, two things, that everybody that we were working with experienced some trauma that led them to be where they are. And then I realized all of my staff also had a story and a trauma. So then I realized we really need to know, how do we understand this? How do we know how it's affecting us? And how can we best respond to everybody? And so that's where I'm coming from. In addition to having my own childhood trauma, I grew up in a family where my father was an alcoholic, and there was lots of chaos and disorganization. And that experience also led me to want to help other people who were struggling. Human service, who are the counselors, the social workers, the ministers, the human services people in the room? Raise your hand. Yeah, amen. You experience a high degree of trauma at a greater rate 2 times than the general population. Isn't that interesting? Now, you wouldn't think that. However, if you think on it a little more deeply, you'll see that people who have been traumatized, people who have had bad experiences, either end up wanting to help other people to get through the same thing, or they end up wanting to be the person, they end up feeling like they didn't get the help they needed, and so they want to be that person, to be the one who helps. So it's really interesting to know that, because that also means that when we are helpers, not only do we experience the trauma and the experiences of the people that we work with, but we also bring our own stuff, which is true for everything really, right? We all bring our own stuff to whatever relationship and whatever situations we're in. So I'm going to try to, I don't know if the slides are going to be helpful, but I do need them to see. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why are we here? 2 reasons. First of all, we're here because you will be welcoming 21 people who have experienced the trauma of being unsheltered into your community, and we want to make sure that the care and the relationships and the way that we are understanding what's going on is trauma informed. We're here also because, as I said earlier today, we all have trauma. We all have experiences that have led us to see the world in a certain way. And so let's understand too, as a church, what does it mean to be trauma-informed, to be welcoming, to understand that sometimes somebody's defensiveness, sometimes somebody's anger or reaction to you may not be about you at all. Amen? It may be about what their history is and what they have experienced and what they're expecting. So we want to always keep that in mind, in church, in gatherings, everywhere, that we're all bringing our stuff. And so compassion, openness to that is so important. So I'm going to ask you to have a little discussion at your tables. And we're going to do this briefly. I'm going to ask each person at a table to report back one thing. But here's the question. If today's workshop, today's training, being here for the next hour and a half, is so much better than you thought, it's like so fabulous you can't believe it, you're telling everybody this was so great, what will have happened for you? This is a way of setting our intentions. So if you talk at your table about what will make this a really great experience for you, or what are you hoping to gain, to learn? We're going to take 5 minutes, so have a quick discussion, and then we'll just go around and I'm going to write some of those things on the pad here so we see what our intentions are for the day. Are the instructions clear? Yeah? Okay, go.
Mine would be being able to use someone
Yes, sir.
I guess you need to ask the question, how many 12-step people are in there? 'Cause I know of at least 10
Ah,
Okay.
okay, including me.
and adult children. of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Been on for 34 years. So
Amen.
I think we could very well be, as I was saying, the docents or the SMEs, subject matter experts.
Excellent.
You need anything?
Gonna get my,
You're running 3 laps around the track today. Can I get you something?
I'm good.
Okay, you're still
Oops, I gotta turn this off.
on. Great message, thank you.
Yeah,
And you got some markers over there, you okay?
I'm getting my own.
I don't want to interfere. You don't feel like you'd be better up on the podium?
I'd like to be, I don't hear very well, so if I walk around and hear what people have to say, yeah,
Okay. Won't stick my nose there.
no
Bad
words.
to do that, Linda, don't you know? Said I'm bad to stick my nose.
Okay, take just one more minute. Okay, let's wrap up your discussion and let's come back as a big group and we're going to try to write this all up. We don't want to take forever on this. Okay, people. Hello, hello. All right, we're going to wrap up our discussions so that we can hear from everybody. Okay? So I'm just going to go table to table and just tell me one thing. So I'm going to start over here, if you don't mind. Tell me one thing. If this were the best training ever, what do you want?
We were late getting here because we were all doing other chores.
Okay, all right. What about this table?
What not to do.
What not to do? All right, anybody else have that in their group? Because there are some ways that we can be re-traumatizing. True? There are ways that we can respond that actually trigger somebody's trauma and makes it worse. So let's talk about that. What about this table here?
Maybe that all people have trauma.
Oh, thank you. All people have trauma. So it's not just them, right? It's all of us, so be aware of that. And that it's not those people over there who are so sad and have terrible things. It's that human beings go through stuff.
Put your microphone.
What's that?
Put your microphone.
I don't even know what else to do. Okay, what about this table here? Okay. One thing.
Our concern was that we would have some guidance and instructions. If we come face to face with one of our neighbors and they're maybe in an agitated state, we would like maybe some suggestion on how to handle those situations.
Okay, that's great. Because one of the things that happen to us when we are working and responding out of our trauma is that we may be reactive rather than responsive. We may get defensive, we may get angry, we may speak in a way that we didn't really intend, but somehow we're triggered, and that's what happens. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Dot, to the next table.
One of our people said that they wanted to know how to deal with traumatized neighbors for without taking on the trauma.
Thank you. So, we are going to talk briefly at the end about secondary trauma. So when we are hearing stories that are upsetting, when we are in the presence of situations that maybe trigger us, how do we take care of ourselves so that we are not carrying that around? Thank you. And Dot did a great job last Sunday, didn't she? Talking about self-care and how to imagine ourselves getting what we need. So some of that. Thank you.
We spent a lot of time talking about our experiences, but I think our general things, we wanted to learn how to be a good neighbor.
How to
How to be good neighbors.
So some of that, right, is just being open, caring, compassionate, the way you would be otherwise, right? Yes, ma'am.
We were just talking about recognizing that all people do have traumas, even though some people might look like they have a perfect life or no problems at all. Everybody does have problems, and we just need to face that right up front.
Yeah. So don't make assumptions, right? You can meet somebody who presents themselves as all put together, and that's a defense, right? Yes.
And we talked a little bit about how do we truly listen and learn from each other.
Listen and learn. I love it. Thank you. So active listening is an important component to trauma-informed care. Really hearing somebody without putting yourself in the way. Yes.
Practical experiences, examples of situations you might encounter.
You got it. I have some. You may also have some, right? Of how you've been affected or experiences that you've had. So we're going to make sure that this applies to all of that. Yes?
Given who's at our table, you won't be surprised that we're already excited about the shared experience in the congregation, that so many of us are participating in this event together. And so we have a shared experience that will help us in community.
Great, great. I'm going to say something about community, right? One of the antidotes to trauma and one of the ways to avoid the worst effects of it is exactly that, community and relationship. We tend to want to isolate when we feel bad, when things aren't going well. We tend to think that, oh, my problems are so much worse than somebody else's, or I'm too embarrassed. And then we find that when we are in community and are able to share that in fact that begins to heal our trauma. People in 12-step programs, which I'm going to name myself as one, know this. It's the power of the group and the rooms. Thank you.
At our table, we talked about just gaining more awareness and gaining more perspective and wanting to become more sensitive in our interactions.
Great. So awareness, perspective, sensitivity, all of that is also being good neighbors. It's also wanting to listen more, right? When we have an awareness and a perspective of what might be going on. Right. Yes. Where are we? Okay.
To be honest, our table spent a fair amount of time talking about how an extra dessert would help us exceed the expectations. We did also mention that we hope to get insight into how to have empathetic relationship with respectful of privacy with our neighbors.
Yeah, so empathy and boundaries and how to keep that, not just important with your neighbors, with the people who will be moving in here. Important for all of us, right? Yes.
I'm out of school, but my high school. I learned the hard way that you do have to be very aware of boundaries. In fact, I'm a very loving, affectionate person, but many of our neighbors have a little bit sexually traumatized. And so you have to be very conscious of body space. And I was kind of loving to someone and I got to know them well, and they felt uncomfortable because I was so kind of loving.
There you go. So physical touch can be a trigger.
Triggering problems of people that don't want to be too close.
Thank you. Yeah, physical touch can be triggering. So we always want to ask permission. Would it be okay if I hugged you? Would it be okay if I feel like I want to pat you on the shoulder? Is that okay? Permission giving. Otherwise, you might be triggering someone who is not comfortable with physical touch, right? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
This is kind of got to go back a little bit, but I have a neighbor who is about 12 years old, and his mother was abusing him. She would actually hit him on his head and do physical harm to him. And he came to me one day and said, "Can I come in your house and be with you?" I said, "Of course," on Indian. And so I gave him a key, so when he came home from school or had a problem, he could come to me and come on in, to my back door. And things are better now because she got help finally.
Great. Well, you created a safe space for him and some relief. And one of the hallmarks of trauma-informed care is safety. Because what trauma does to us is creates a sense that we are not safe in our homes, in our skin, in our relationships. And so we always want to understand, what can we do so that people know that this church is a safe place, that whoever you are, there's safety here. Okay, did we get everybody? Yes, anything else you want to add? I still didn't hear that.
Learn how to listen.
Listen. Listening, learning how to listen. Active listening is a skill. It doesn't always come naturally. We human beings tend to want to talk more than we want to listen. So that is something that's so important. Yes?
This is the most elementary question, but what do you think trauma is and what is it not?
He just led me to my next slide. He wants to know what is trauma and what is it. So I'm going to move on. And I have a definition up here, and I don't know it by memory, so I got to call it up on my slides here. But a trauma is an event. So one thing that happened. Grandma died. We lost our housing. My friend was shot. One thing, an event, or a series of events. My parents are in addiction and we never know what to expect when we get home. A series of events. We live in poverty, and so we're going from place to place and don't have stable housing. A series of events that affect that are experienced. So it's the event, that is experienced as physically, emotionally threatening. So we have a lot of talk in our culture these days about trauma. It's become a popular topic, yes? And actually, when I first started doing these trainings, I'm going to say 15, 16 years ago, for the staff, like at the men's shelter and the women's shelter, it was new. People hadn't heard of it before. These days, people use the word, I mean, it's a good thing that more people are aware. And also, we can trivialize or minimize by using the word trauma to describe our boyfriend not showing up on time, or not getting not getting to go where we wanted to go, so traumatized. That is not trauma. Trauma is an experience where you are threatened. Physically, emotionally, you are in danger, or you experience it as being in danger. So I'm going to tell you a story, and then that affects the individual. You're functioning mentally, physically, socially, psychologically, and spiritually. The definition I use includes spiritual functioning as part of the definition. Like the story I told you earlier today in the sermon about people lose hope, lose their connection to the higher power as a result of the trauma that they experience. So it's all those three things all together. So I told you earlier, part of my story is that I grew up in a household where my father was an alcoholic, and I experienced the trauma of that as the oldest girl and the one who felt like she had to keep everybody together in a whole different way. We don't all experience the same things in the same way. My brother and I now talk, and I'll tell him, I'm still struggling with whatever that was. And he will say, really? I don't remember that. Are you sure that really happened? That wasn't in my childhood. We have different experiences. And he had a strategy also. When he was young and first started to ride his bike, he would get on his bike and he would be gone. And he would make families out of all of his friends' parents so that he didn't have to be home. We lived in the same household. I experienced it differently. It affected me differently than it did him. Now, I'm telling you that story because you may think, oh, I've had that same experience. I know just what that's like. Your experience is not the experience of the other person. It might be, but don't assume that it is. So there's our definition of trauma. Got it? Questions about that? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about you all read Grandmother's Hands as a part of your study here. This is his definition. The body's response to an event or series of events that are perceived as dangerous. So trauma in this definition and in several other definitions, now that we know more about the connection between body, brain, feelings, events, is that trauma is not just the thing that happened, but it's how it affected your body that triggers your response. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the early trauma research, and then we're going to move on to kind of the effects of it. So back in the 1980s, there was a researcher who thought that he was going to solve the most pressing medical problem in the United States. He was going to find a cure for obesity. He got a lot of money, got a grant. Dr. Felitti is his name. He partnered up and set up a whole program for people who were overweight And he had a lot of success for about the first 6 months. And then after that, he noticed that so many of his clients were reverting back to their old behaviors. Many of his clients were not showing the outcomes that they expected, and some of them even gained more weight. And so he interviewed everybody who was a part of the study. And in the interviews, one of the questions they asked was, when was your first sexual experience and what was your weight? And one of the women answered, I weighed 40 pounds, I was 9 years old, right? That result about early childhood sexual abuse was repeated over and over and over. And so he discovered, in some ways, one of the physical effects of trauma. And we kind of know this today. I think it's in our cultural understanding that oftentimes people gain weight. I have a client who started losing weight and started dropping in sizes, and then she tells me, I'm scared. I'm going to start gaining weight again because I don't want to be too attractive because the men at work are going to come after me. And that was her experience. Men also have this experience if they have that in their childhood where they will bulk up so that they can be stronger. They can, right, fight off. So they discovered that early childhood trauma, like sexual abuse, like violence, like other physical violence, mental illness, addiction, right, lead to a host and a range of experiences for people. When he first presented his research at the Psychiatric Association, all of his colleagues said, yeah, no. No, this is just, this is just people behaving badly, not having what they need. What came out of this was the ACEs study that John mentioned in his sermon a few weeks ago, Adverse Childhood Experiences. I have copies of the study for those of you who want to look at it. But it measures by a score kind of what your level of trauma is and indicates then how you might be responding. So it has things like abuse, mental illness, addiction in your household. And here's what the research showed. Trauma, believe it or not, has lasting effects, physical effects. People with high degrees of trauma have, I think, 5 times more the likelihood of COPD. Hepatitis. Suicide, we might guess that, right? Trauma, suicide seem connected. But what about broken bones? I'm not talking about your bones get broken because somebody beats you up in violence. I'm talking about you go to the doctor multiple times over your lifetime because your bones keep breaking. That's the physical connection between emotional trauma and what happens to our bodies. Addiction. You are 7 times more likely to be in addiction if you have a high score of childhood trauma. So I'm just going to say a little side note here, because we often have seen people in addiction as people who are making bad choices. Just stop, right? Then we started seeing it as a disease that's somehow genetic, and part of that is true. But the high correlation between trauma and addiction means that we cannot ignore trauma care as a part of our treatment for addiction. Now that's my little side sermon there. However, when you see people who are homeless, oftentimes what we have in our mind are people who are in addiction, right? And we maybe even feel some kind of way about that, some kind of judging way, like they should get help, what's wrong with them? But if we understand the connection between a high degree of trauma and addiction, then maybe we can look at that in a different way. That this isn't bad choices. This is somebody who has no choice, who is unable to manage the trauma that they've experienced. When I was at Dove's Nest, which is a residential program for women experiencing homelessness and addiction, we started a trauma program. And we did this scoring, this assessment, and decided that everybody who scored 4 or more would be in a trauma group in addition to the regular treatment. We had one counselor set up to get that program going, but guess what? Right? 90% of the women in the program had the high degree of trauma. So a high correlation. I just want to call that to your attention. One more thing I'm going to say here also about research. We know this more these days than we ever have before. That trauma can create our brains to work in a different way. Do you know that? Some of the great treatment that's happening now for trauma has to do with breath work, has to do with reorienting kind of the way your brain operates, because there is this thing that when you're in trauma, your brain operates in fight, flight, freeze, please. You know that, right? Which means that your executive functioning, I'm not a neuroscientist, so you go look this up online and it's going to say it a whole lot more detail and different than I do. But the way I understand it is that the prefrontal cortex shuts down. Your ability to make decisions, your executive functioning is compromised. And so you are in fight, flight. You can't make decisions. You're running, right? You're trying to get away. You're trying to please. You're trying to somehow, and you're not making good decisions because your brain has lost its executive functioning. Now, I say this to caseworkers, and I'll say this to you too, doesn't necessarily apply here, except that we have the expectation that when we are interacting with people in homelessness, when people in addiction, people who are seeking help, we expect them to be able to fill out our forms, get their ID, follow the protocol, make decisions about what they're going to do. We expect them to budget so that they can afford their apartments. We expect them to do all these high-level executive functioning things when actually their brain is compromised. They are not able to make the decisions and the choices that would be maybe even best for them. That's how trauma affects us, physically, mentally. The other part of this, the spiritual part of this, and the part of this that you will be able to address. Oftentimes when we are in trauma, we lose our ability to hope. We lose our ability for big picture thinking and problem solving. So for those people we interact with who are in that place, we must be the ones who carry the hope. Without blame and judgment, we are able to see the bigger picture in a way that they are not able to. So just a thought about that. What questions do you have so far, comments? All right, I'm going to leave the ACEs studies and the resilience studies in the back table for anybody who wants to take it. I don't want to take too much time just talking about the problem and not talking about the solution, but I do want to call to your attention the race-based stress and trauma that people of color experience in our community, in our culture. When I did this training, my friend Terry, I said, you know, people in Charlotte, here's the statistic. People who receive homeless services in Charlotte, 79% of them are black people. 32% of our overall population. So that says to us, systematic racism and trauma continues to be at work in our world. And sometimes I've seen people say, even use that in a racist kind of way, right? But we know it's about systemic racism, it's about microaggressions, it's about the lack of opportunity, all of that stuff that I know you all know. Add that to the score of the person who already has adverse childhood experiences. It is really hard. Oh, this is what I'm going to say. So I was saying, you know, to be black in Charlotte is to experience trauma without anything having happened in your childhood. And my friend Terry said, Barbara, how about being black in America and being black in the world? And she is right. Yeah. Now I also am going to acknowledge that I am a white woman speaking to this, so I open up to any person of color if you would like to comment or not about this. Yeah.
You're using a broad broom and you should never do that.
What's that?
You should have learned long ago not to use a broad broom when making statements like that.
Oh, statements like?
You just made.
Ah, okay. Well, I'm going on the research, and it certainly doesn't apply to everybody.
Okay.
But the research shows us that it does apply.
Depends on what research you do. I'm a researcher.
Okay, so let's talk later, and we can talk about it. Yeah, okay. Also, into the LGBTQ community, they are 3.9 times more likely to meet the criteria for PTSD. You can see this, I don't know if you can, so I'm going to read it to you. 45% of the LGBTQ women and 28% report experiencing some form of violence or abuse. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Hello? I think that's on. Hello? Hello?
Yes. Ah, there you go.
What I wanted to say is that what you were saying is absolutely right. The statistics of the population versus what happens. And I would say, only because I'm a black person and I'm a black woman, it's absolutely true. A lot of people don't understand all the subtle ways. There was another word.
Microaggressions.
That's it. There are so many subtle ways this happens each and every day. You're standing online in the grocery store and a white person will come and stand right in front of you and almost be appalled if you say something about, I was here first. So there are just 1,000 ways that this goes on every day. And yes, that itself in itself can be traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
I maintain with the trauma I feel that I've gone through, or the micro trauma, or the aggression and everything, there is some kind of responsibility to be able to not blame everyone. Just because you're white and we had a problem, I cannot be mad at everyone white. It's not possible. Well, and perhaps for something what I was saying earlier that most of my table disagreed with, I do believe that there are some people in this world that exist without major traumas. And so I'm not saying things don't happen to them. I'm saying Trauma to me is a much heavier word than something happened to me, or I didn't like this, or, you know, I didn't get the car I wanted, or things like that, simple things. Trauma is something that is heavy, that it is deep, and it is really up to each one of us, at least where we have church and God, to try to keep it in perspective. You know, there was slavery. What am I going to do about every white person I see?
Amen.
I have sisters, brothers, that it doesn't matter that we don't share blood. They're in my heart, and I feel absolutely the same way I feel about those that are my blood. So.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
What you're saying, so I love your sermon, and I feel so much for
Thank
what
you.
you're saying. We have to really have a lot of empathy and compassion when you're talking to someone, because it's not about how we feel about it. It's more about trying to ascertain or get the gist of how they feel about it.
Thank you, absolutely, absolutely. So thank you for that perspective, yes, appreciate that. Yeah, and so I love what you're saying too. You said it better than I did at the beginning. Trauma is heavy, it's important. It is a threatening, life-threatening event sometimes, not just a simple thing. Yeah, thank you. So here are the statistics about the LGBTQ community. High degree of trauma. And so this just goes to awareness. So let's be aware that people from different groups will experience a higher degree of trauma just because of who they are. And let's be open and aware and empathic about that. Thanks. So let's talk now about trauma-informed care. It's about asking the right question. We are not going to ask what's wrong with them. We are going to ask what happened to them. What happened to them that makes this reaction one that works for them? What happened to them that they have lived their lives in this way? Accepting, non-judgmental, open. I'm going to tell you a little story. Woman who was referred to me when I was working at Urban Ministry Center. And I found out later that the staff referred her to me because they were all tired of her and didn't want to deal with her, and I was new. So they're like, send her to the new girl, right? She comes in my office, and I didn't know her, I haven't even met her, and she starts loudly yelling at me how I don't know what I'm not going to swear, I'm doing, and if I think I can help her, I'm wrong because I don't know any, in my face, yelling at me, right? So, one of the ways I could have responded was, wait, stop. Don't talk to me that way. But if I didn't make it about me, because I was feeling a little traumatized myself, actually, that was triggering for me. Deep breath. You seem really angry. Right? I'm responding to her feelings. What is going on? You are convinced that I'm not going to be able to help you. Wow. What's that all about? What's been happening? We were then able to have a conversation when it was open about her and not about me, not about her behavior either. Because sometimes we want to say, oh, don't talk to me that way, or don't swear, right? We want to control people's behavior to make us feel comfortable. But if we let ourselves feel uncomfortable and open up the conversation to ask, what happened to this person? So here's her story, which I came to find out as we got to know each other. She had been on the street since she was 12 or 13. She had been abused. She had multiple boyfriends who she hung on to protect her while she was on the streets. Her family rejected her. She now adopted this like in-your-face yelling, crazy seeming way of interacting as a protection. And all the people who would say like, oh yeah, don't go near her. She'll bite your head off. Don't have anything to do with her. So what happened to her was she was abused, traumatized, homeless, and she developed this strategy that worked very well for her to protect her. People stayed away from her because she was so difficult. Gonna move on for just a minute. All of us who have experienced trauma also have our ways, our strategies for dealing with the pain that we feel. And it might come up as yelling and defensive. It might come up as we are quiet and retiring. It might come up that we try to please everybody and seem like the good guy all the time. All of those are strategies for dealing with the pain. So here's what trauma looks like. It can be that person who's in your face, defensive, angry, yelling, or it can be the person sitting in the corner, sad and crying, not saying a word, and everything in between. And as was mentioned before, it can be the person who looks so put together. And do you know those people? And it might be you. Used to be me in my 20s. If I just looked put together, and if I presented myself well, and if I had the right clothes, and I spoke the right way, then I'd be okay. Trying to protect myself, right? We have our strategies. Another hallmark of trauma is people are disorganized. Remember we said their brain isn't working right? So they're disorganized, confused. Sometimes their narrative doesn't hold together. And you're like, well, wait, why didn't you tell me yesterday that you didn't have enough money? How come it's just coming up today? Sometimes when our brains are not working, and I've got the Post-it notes up here because I had a colleague who did this demonstration, which I thought was great. He said, imagine your Post-it notes are all on your laptop or on your wall or wherever you keep them, and a wind comes through and blows them away. And now they are scattered everywhere. He says that's kind of the brain of somebody who's living in trauma. Stuff is everywhere, but you can't really find it. Last thing, and then we're going to talk clearer about trauma-informed care. Characteristics to identify. I found this list at a training that I took. And you may find yourself in this. I certainly do. People with high degrees of trauma have these characteristics: low self-esteem, negative self-talk. So if you are one of those people, and I find this to be so true among our social workers and case managers that I do training for, I didn't do a good job, it's my fault that they failed, I probably shouldn't be in this, I'm not okay, blaming themselves all the time. When we're children and something bad happens to us, it's safer to blame ourselves than to blame the person who is supposed to be protecting us. And some of us can carry that strategy into our adult lives and blame ourselves for everything. Rumination, constantly worrying, what's going to happen next, now what? Hard time making decisions, because remember your brain, right? Hypervigilance, we see this so much. This kind of like the person who can't sit with their back to the door. Raise your hand. Come on, there are a lot of you. Can't sit with their back to the door. It's a sign of hypervigilance. Like somebody's kind of come up on you Can't sit there or always waiting for the next shoe to drop, something else to happen. Emotional dysregulation, do you know what that is? Yes, you're happy one day, you're sad the next day, you're angry, you're all over the place emotionally. Or flat affect, you have no feelings at all. Yeah, which we'll run into as well. Risky behaviors. Again, I'm going to call your attention to the fact that risky behaviors often are not a choice. Nobody says, when I grow up, I am going to choose to do drugs and be a drug addict. Right? However, trauma is highly correlated with risky behaviors. Social isolation, we talked about that. Difficulty concentrating and focusing. Right? That Post-it note. Just some of the symptoms, some of the signs. The last thing, trust. And I will name this for myself. People with high degrees of trauma have difficulty trusting other people. Trusting the world. Trusting that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Don't take it personal. Okay? So, here's the definition. Trust, the ability to believe in the safety, reliability, and honesty of another. Some of us who grew up without trauma naturally trust that when they meet someone, that person is going to have their best at heart. Wow. Yeah. Some of us have to really work at that. Trust also is, I know that you will not intentionally harm me. I am emotionally and physically safe with you. If the people who were supposed to love you and protect you as a child did not, chances are that you are not going to trust that other people will provide that for you. So here's what I want to say about trauma-informed care in this context. I have case managers who say, she just doesn't trust anybody. She doesn't trust me, I can't tell her anything. And they take it personally, or they blame the person, right? I'm a nice person, I'm a good case manager, I've done everything I could do. Still, she won't trust me. It's not about you. The person does not have that capacity. So the best thing that we can do is to be trustworthy, dependable, do what we say we're going to do, and let's not blame them for not trusting us. Let's not make it about us, like I am such a good person, what's wrong with them that they can't see that? It's not about you. All right. Let's talk more intentionally about trauma-informed care. We're going to ask the right question, and we're going to ask it with compassionate curiosity. Not curiosity like, oh, gossip, like what happened to her? Curiosity like, with compassion, I would love to hear what's going on with you. How are you feeling? What's this all about for you? No judgment, acceptance, and compassion. Now, John, you may know this. Early on, I was doing a sermon research on the word compassion. And what I discovered is that it comes from the same root as the word for twins, either in Hebrew or Greek, I don't know which. Meaning to feel with, as you would feel with a twin. Anybody here a twin? Yeah. Can you feel your person? Sometimes? Yeah. So when Jesus has compassion, when Jesus has mercy, which is the other way it's translated in Scripture, what the words actually note is a feeling with, like you would feel with somebody who shared the womb with you. So I'm talking about compassionate, feeling with, and being curious and open to the story. And how do we do that? Active listening, you know that. Open-ended questions, affirmations. Anybody here a fan of motivational interviewing? My favorite thing, we teach it over there too, but it's a way of engaging people. Open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections. So, an open-ended question invites the person to tell the story. Not, are you from Charlotte? What are the responses to that? Yes, no. Are you feeling angry? Yes, no. The sure way to cut off a conversation is by asking a closed-ended question that only has a yes or no response. When you go to the doctor and you talk to that nurse or that person who's checking you in and they're saying, do you have this, do you have that, did you do this, did you do that? Pretty soon you know that they're not really interested in hearing what you have to say. They are filling out the form and getting the answers to the question. A conversation that invites the telling of the story is open-ended and filled with affirmations. Positive response to the person. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to tell you a story, and at your tables, I'm going to invite you to, let's see, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to invite you to come up with some responses, okay? Here's the story, and I don't have it in my slides, but here's the story. Joey is feeling kind of rough. He's looking bloodshot. He comes to you, his eyes are bloodshot. He looks tired. He comes to you saying, I don't know if I can go on like this. Things are really tough. I just don't know what to do. You got it? So Joey comes to you, looking rough, bloodshot, tired, eyes tired, and says, I don't know if I can go on like this. I don't know what to do. At your tables, talk for a few minutes about what are the open-ended questions that you might have? What are the affirmations you might offer to Joey? What are the reflections you might offer him? Do the instructions seem clear? Okay, go.
Hey everybody, in the last bowl of food, we have stuff to take home. We have take-home trays. So if you want to take some food home, we still got plenty left. Let's go.
Are we getting to lose people? I'm looking around, I'm seeing people getting ready to.
Yeah, so I thought we were going 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Which would be 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, let's take just one more minute because we're running low on time here. Okay, I know it's not enough time, but let's wrap up our discussions, just so you can get a feel for it.
Because that's to be
All right, here's what I want to hear. Who came up with the good affirmation for Joey? Who came up with an affirmation for Joey?
Came up with one, I don't know.
What's that?
I said we came up with one, I don't know if it's a good
Yeah,
one.
let's hear it.
I said, I'm here to listen.
I'm here to listen. Affirmation. Thank you for sharing. How about that? To affirm him. Yeah. Other affirmations?
It sounds like you're in a really hard place.
Thank you. It sounds like you're in a really hard place. Think about this for a minute. How affirming is it when you are feeling bad and somebody just says to you, wow, this is really tough, or you're really feeling bad? Doesn't that just make you feel affirmed and like it's okay and like they get it? Yes. What else?
I was going to say, once someone can really go through the explaining what the situation, what the situation really is, I found that, like, sometimes to wrap it up or make it a soft ending, I tell people a lot of times, wow, I really learned something from you today. I never thought about that situation like that. But now that you told me that, I have a different understanding.
How affirming is that? Wow, I really learned from you. Wow, that gives me a perspective. Yes, affirming the other person. Every interaction we have, if we can find an affirmation, even if it's just, thank you for talking, we end up boosting the person. Go ahead.
My son is, well, as they say, once an addict, always an addict. He has been clean for 7 years, but he still knows that he is vulnerable, and he's doing absolutely wonderfully.
Great.
But he still can say, I am subject to relapse. And he always knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a very important thing to realize, you know, what your limits are and what you still have to face practically on a daily basis.
Well, people in recovery know that, right? One day at a time, that's all it is. Yes, thank you. Who had a open-ended question for Joey in this situation? Let's hear. What's going on? Yes, invites the telling of the story. Thank you. Any other ideas? Yes.
Sort of like that, but what's that like? What's that like for you?
What's that like for you? So we're not going to assume that we know what it's like. We're going to ask, what's going on? What's that like for you? Excellent, right? Good job. Okay, we have a few more minutes, a few more things I want to say, and then we'll end. Whoops. Here are the hallmarks of trauma-informed care: safety. So I want you to think about how you yourself demonstrate that you are safe. Sometimes it's a smile, an open posture, a decision not to talk about yourself, to make the other person more comfortable. We can, regardless of where we are, display safety, the number one concern of people who have experienced trauma, by the way that we interact. Openness, eye to eye, right? How do you as a church demonstrate that this is a safe place? Something to think about, right? And how will you demonstrate that for your neighbors who will be living next door? That we are safe, right? Second part of this is collaboration. We do not want this, we want this. We are collaborators. What I say to case managers, that in any conversation or interview or session with somebody they're working with, there is one expert in the room, and it's not you, right? The expert about what things are like and what's going on with them and those questions you were asking, the expert is not you, it's them. So if we put ourselves in the position as learners, I learned this from you. Thank you for sharing that with me. Tell me what this is like for you. Compassionate curiosity. We are collaborating, not thinking that we are somehow up here, right? We're all in this together. Empowerment. Now, this word was really popular in social work, now not so popular because of the notion that somehow we could empower somebody, which puts us in the powerful place, right? That's not the meaning of it. It's more about making sure that we are not doing for somebody something that they can do for themselves, which tells them that they are not capable. We can always ask, would you want me to help you with that? Right? But we're going to respect that everybody is capable. Choice and voice. We are not going to tell people what they should do, could do, what would be best for them. We want to hear, what is this like for you? What are your ideas? And finally, strengths-based. That's why I did the affirmation things especially. Everybody has strengths. Everybody has something they're good at. Everybody has a wonderful smile, an engaging way of talking, patience, whatever. Let's find that thing about that person and affirm them and trust that they will use their strengths to do what needs to be done. Last thing here. So let's think about how we might be triggering or re-traumatizing is what we say. Can you see my guy there? Standing like this. When we feel ourselves wanting to blame, wanting to judge, wanting to say, well, you know, if you didn't choose, well, if you hadn't spent all your money on, well, if you had really followed the rules then, right? Judgy, re-traumatizing. We might be thinking that. So we might say in a more open way, I'm having an issue here because of this. Help me understand. But we don't want to be shame, blame, and all of that is a trigger for trauma. So we want to minimize re-traumatization. We want to be trustworthy, reliable, non-judgmental, accepting. Now, I'm going to say that when we feel triggered, like you remember that story I told you about the woman who came into my office yelling? How many of you feel triggered when somebody's yelling at you? Yeah, right? It takes hard work to stop and create space for what they're saying and not be triggered ourselves. So we need to be aware and not re-traumatize. We're going to be accepting, non-judgmental, reliable. And if we're not reliable, or something happens and we don't make it on time, or what, that happens, let's be transparent about it, because we know trust is an issue. Yeah? Last thing I'm going to talk about, vicarious trauma. That's when we take the trauma of somebody else home with us. With our case managers, we talk about, so who's riding in the back seat with you? Not literally, but figuratively. A question to ask yourself as well. What's bothering you? Who's taking a ride home with you that didn't pay for their gas? And what can you do to release that? And think about how you take care of yourself. Self-care is more than just a cupcake after work. I, in turn, had this little phrase and I loved it, right? Like, oh, I had such a bad day. I'm going to go to the bakery. I'm going to get some ice cream, right? It's really an intentional paying attention to what you need, what you're feeling, and journaling, meditating, praying, talking to people about it. Resilience is the antidote to trauma. So trauma can be healed. You can recover from trauma. It does not have to be with you always. That was a song that, Anne, you remember now that you and I talked about. I'm so glad that trouble don't last always, right? Trauma does not last always. There are ways to recover. Resilience, community, connection creates healing. And that's what you all will be providing as you open your property to welcoming people here, to remove the isolation and to begin the healing. So, questions, comments? We're about, yes, ma'am.
I would say, go slowly.
Thank you, very good advice.
Become a psychotherapist, out there and get all of it over and, go slowly and take it moment by moment and trust the Lord.
Amen. And always.
If we let Him.
Trust God, right, and go slow. You're not going to have an immediate best friends with somebody who has a completely different background than you just because you want to have that, right? But you can approach with safety, non-judgmental acceptance, and that's great advice. One last comment and we have to stop. Okay, yes.
I just like to know what this last part has brought up in me is how long it has taken me in even friendships to share stuff like what we're talking about, and just to be, to have that awareness that this is not an easy, fast, complete.
Amen. That's right. And for some of us, it takes years and years to trust our good friend, our partner, with some stuff about ourselves that feels broken. And so we don't need to expect that people are going to share their story automatically with us just because we're so great, right? Thank you. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
60 more seconds. First of all, we have several people to thank. Skylar for, at the last minute, recording. always there for us. I first took this class from Barbara just a few weeks ago and envisioned what would happen what if we got through a day like this. And so I want to thank her. It's hard enough to lead worship and preach, and then you want to go home and take a nap. And she's just taught a seminar to us, and so let's thank Barbara Thomas. Barbara's been a great friend, and I feel like God is really working in our relationship, and I'm grateful for that. Congratulate yourselves. It's not easy to do what you just did. Sit through a heavy topic like this, respectful of other people around you, listening really hard, handling whatever it might be churning up. So congratulate yourselves, all of you. Katie, get the youth out here. Katie, get the youth out here. Our youth did the overnight, and here they are going on 2 o'clock washing our dishes. So Justin, Jessica, Andy, Eli, Katie, Caleb, Betsy. This church is a wonderful testament to how everybody pitches in, and everybody has done that today. So thank you. Go home, do a cupcake or whatever else. Whose birthday? Jeanette's birthday. Jeanette, happy birthday. We share the hall. As you all know, groups use this hall all the time, and somebody we didn't know until right before this started snapped off the gizmo that projects the slides up there. No worries, we'll get it fixed. We will share the stream with the slides with you, and I'll go ahead and link the slides to you. It may take a minute to do the stream. So watch for the slides this week in my communications on Tuesday to you. God bless you. Thank you for doing this hard work. And there's a book swap over here if you would like. Go in peace.